July 30th, 1962. In a quiet bedroom in Brentwood, a trembling hand writes words that would never see daylight for 50 years. I feel as though I might be disappearing. Marilyn Monroe had 5 days left to live, but she had no idea that the fragments of poetry and intimate thoughts she was scribbling in her notebook would reveal the devastating truth about her final moments. What if I told you that everything you think you know about Marilyn's death is incomplete? Hidden away for decades were her most intimate writings, poems, confessions, and heartbreaking reflections that expose the real woman behind the icon. Tonight, I'll take you through her own words, written in her own hand, in the final week of her life. This isn't just another Hollywood tragedy. This is Marilyn Monroe's untold story, written by her own heart. Subscribe now to hear the truth she never got to tell. July 30th, 1962. Brentwood, California. 11:47 p.m. My hands are shaking as I write this. Not from the pills, though God knows I've taken enough of those lately, but from something deeper. Something that's been clawing at my chest for weeks now. I can hear the grandfather clock in the hallway counting down the seconds of another sleepless night. Mrs. Murray, my housekeeper, thinks I'm asleep, but how can I sleep when the world feels like it's crumbling around me? When the people I trusted most have turned their backs on me like I'm some kind of disease they might catch. I found this notebook today, buried beneath some old scripts in my bedroom drawer. The leather cover is worn and soft, like an old friend's hand. I thought maybe if I could write it all down, the things I can't say out loud, the secrets that are suffocating me, maybe I could make sense of it all. I feel as though I might be disappearing. Not just from Hollywood, but from myself. I wrote that line and stared at it for 20 minutes. Is that what's happening to me? Am I disappearing? The woman everyone sees, the one with the platinum hair and the breathless voice and the painted smile, she feels like a stranger wearing my skin. Arthur used to say I had the soul of a poet trapped in the body of a sex symbol. I laughed when he said it because I thought it was romantic. Now I wonder if he meant it as a warning. Tonight, I called Bobby's private line again. The number he gave me 6 months ago when everything between us felt like magic, like destiny. The phone rang and rang until a voice I didn't recognize answered and told me that number had been disconnected. Disconnected. That's what I am now. Disconnected from my career, from the studio that built me and then discarded me like a broken toy. Disconnected from the brothers who promised me the world and then acted like they'd never heard my name. Disconnected from my own reflection in the mirror. But maybe that's not entirely true. Maybe I'm finally connecting to something real, to the part of me that Norma Jean never had the courage to show the world. The part that writes poetry at midnight and dreams of being taken seriously as an actress, not just as a body to sell movie tickets. I've been thinking about my mother lately. About Gladys and her journals, how she used to scribble her thoughts in the margins of newspapers when the asylum wouldn't give her proper paper. Was she crazy, or was she just a woman trying to make sense of a world that refused to understand her? The true things rarely get into circulation. It's usually the false things. I said that to a reporter last month, and they printed it like it was just another clever quote from the dumb blonde. But I meant every word. The true things about my life, about what's really happening behind these closed doors, they'll never see the light of day. Or will they? Maybe this notebook will be different. Maybe someday, someone will read these words and understand that Marilyn Monroe was more than what they made her. Maybe they'll see that behind all the glamour and tragedy, there was a woman who simply wanted to be heard. August 1st, 1962. 3:22 a.m. I couldn't sleep again, so I lit a cigarette and opened my notebook to a fresh page. Sometimes the only way to quiet the noise in my head is to let it pour out through my pen. My love sleeps beside me in the faint light. I see his manly jaw give way and the mouth of his boyhood returns with a softness softer, its sensitiveness trembling in stillness. I wrote that about Arthur once, back when I thought love could save me. Now I'm writing about ghosts, men who touched my life and then vanished like smoke. But tonight, I'm writing about something else. Something I've never told anyone. 3 days ago, I found the courage to write a letter. Not to Bobby, not to Jack, but to myself. To the little girl who used to hide in closets when the foster fathers came home drunk. To Norma Jean, who believed that if she could just be beautiful enough, lovable enough, someone would finally want to keep her. Dear Norma Jean, I wrote. I'm sorry I let them turn you into someone else. Dr. Greensun says I have an unstable sense of self. He uses words like fragmentation and dissociation like they're medical mysteries, but I know exactly what he means. I've been split in two for so long I've forgotten which half is real. The Marilyn half gets the movie contracts and the magazine covers and the powerful men who whisper promises they never intend to keep. The Norma Jean half gets the nightmares and the empty pill bottles and the 4 a.m. phone calls to friends who've stopped answering. But there's something Dr. Greensun doesn't know. Something I've never told him in all our sessions. Last week, when Bobby came to my house, yes, he was here, despite what the newspapers will say, he brought a briefcase full of documents. Government papers. Photos. Things he said I could never tell anyone about. "You're in too deep, Marilyn," he said, using that cold voice he reserves for criminals and communists. "This has to end." I laughed. Actually laughed. "Which part has to end, Bobby? The part where I know about your brother's back-channel communications with certain foreign governments? Or the part where I have tapes of our conversations about things that would make front-page headlines?" His face went white. That's when I knew I had miscalculated everything. I've been writing it all down in this notebook. Every conversation, every threat, every moment when I realized that being Marilyn Monroe, being the woman everyone desired but no one respected, had put me in danger I never saw coming. I feel like I'm standing on the edge of a cliff, and the ground keeps crumbling beneath my feet. I wrote that line tonight, and I can't stop staring at it. Because it's true. The studio wants to destroy my career. The men I loved want to erase me from their history. And now I'm starting to think that someone wants to erase me completely. But I'm not going quietly. If something happens to me, this notebook will survive. These words will survive. The truth about what really happened in those final days will survive. August 2nd, 1962. 6:15 p.m. The phone has been ringing all day, but it's never the voice I want to hear. Mrs. Murray keeps taking messages from reporters, agents, people who claim to be friends but sound more like vultures circling overhead. "Miss Monroe is resting," she tells them, "but I'm not resting. I'm drowning." This morning, I tried calling Jack's direct line one more time. The one he gave me that night at Madison Square Garden when the entire world watched me sing "Happy Birthday" to him in that skin-tight dress. The night he whispered in my ear that I was extraordinary, that I understood him in ways his wife never could. A secretary answered. Cold, professional, dismissive. "The president is not available to take calls from private citizens." Private citizens. As if 3 months ago I wasn't receiving handwritten notes from the Oval Office. As if Bobby wasn't showing up at my door with flowers and promises about leaving his wife. I hung up and immediately dialed Peter Lawford. At least Peter has always been honest about being a messenger boy for the Kennedy family. His wife Pat answered, Bobby's sister, and her voice turned to ice the moment she heard my name. "Marilyn, you need to stop calling here. You need to stop calling any of us." "I just need to speak to Bobby," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Just 5 minutes. There are things he needs to know." "There's nothing he needs to know from you." Pat's words cut like glass. "Whatever you think happened between you and my brothers, it's over. It never really happened. Do you understand me? But it did happen. I have the poems I wrote about our conversations. I have the photos we took together. I have recordings of phone calls where Bobby told me he was falling in love with me, where Jack talked about making me his unofficial cultural ambassador to Europe. I have proof. But apparently, proof doesn't matter when you're fighting the most powerful family in America. They want me to disappear, but disappearing is the one thing I've never been good at. I wrote that in my notebook after Pat hung up on me, and it made me think about my mother. About Gladys and how she used to say that the world was full of people who would smile at your face while sharpening knives behind their backs. Dr. Greensun thinks my paranoia is a symptom of my mental illness. But what if it's not paranoia when they're actually out to get you? Tonight, I found something that proves I'm not crazy. Hidden in my bedroom, behind a loose baseboard that I discovered by accident, I found a small recording device. Professional quality. Government grade. Someone has been listening to my private conversations. Recording my phone calls. Monitoring my life like I'm some kind of national security threat. The question is, How long have they been watching me? And more importantly, what are they planning to do with all that information? I'm starting to think that the real reason Bobby came to see me wasn't to end our affair. It was to find out how much I knew and how much evidence I had collected. August 3rd, 1962. 11:30 p.m. I almost burned this notebook tonight. Almost threw it into the fireplace and watched all these words turn to ash. Because what I'm about to write down is the one secret that could destroy everything, not just for me, but for the entire country. But then I realized, if something happens to me, someone needs to know the truth. Someone needs to understand why they wanted me silenced. 6 weeks ago, Bobby brought me to a house in Beverly Hills. Not his usual hotel rooms or my place, but somewhere neutral. Safe, he said. We needed to talk about national security matters. I thought he was being dramatic. Bobby always had a flair for the theatrical. But when he opened that briefcase and spread those photographs across the coffee table, I understood why his hands were shaking. These were taken in Cuba, he said quietly, before the Bay of Pigs. Some of our associates documented certain operations that were never supposed to exist. The photos showed American soldiers, American weapons, American money changing hands with people Bobby called our Cuban friends. But I recognized some of the faces in those pictures. Men I'd met at Hollywood parties. Men who worked for the same studio bosses who controlled my career. Why are you showing me this? I whispered. Because you're already involved, Marilyn. Whether you know it or not. That's when he told me about the recordings. Not just the device I found in my bedroom, but others. In my dressing room at Fox. In my car. In every hotel room I'd stayed in for the past year. We've been protecting you, Bobby said. There are people who would hurt you to get to us. People who would use you to expose operations that could compromise national security. But I wasn't stupid. I understood what he was really saying. I had become a liability. A beautiful, famous, unpredictable liability who knew too much about the wrong things. What you think of me isn't who I really am. What I really am would terrify you. I wrote that line in my notebook after Bobby left that night, and I've been thinking about it ever since. Because it's true. The real Marilyn Monroe, the one who pays attention, who remembers conversations, who keeps detailed notes about everything. She's much more dangerous than anyone realizes. I've been keeping my own recordings. Every phone call with Bobby. Every late-night conversation with Jack. Every time they told me things they shouldn't have told me. And I've been making copies. Hiding them in places they would never think to look. Dr. Green's son doesn't know that his star patient has been documenting every therapy session, every medication he's prescribed, every time he's asked me questions that seemed more like interrogations than treatment. Yesterday, I realized something that made my blood run cold. Dr. Green's son isn't just my psychiatrist. He's reporting back to someone about my mental state, my stability, my likelihood to cause problems. They've been planning this for months. Maybe longer. August 4th, 1962. 7:45 p.m. Peter Lawford's voice is slurred on the other end of the line, but I can hear the panic underneath the alcohol. Marilyn, you need to listen to me very carefully. Bobby was here. At the beach house. He's not happy about the conversation you two had yesterday. My hands are steady as I write this, steadier than they've been in days. Because finally, everything is clear. Tell me something, Peter, I say, keeping my voice soft and sweet, the way they taught me at the studio. Did you know about the listening devices? Did you know they've been recording me for over a year? The silence on the other end tells me everything I need to know. Marilyn, listen, why don't you come over? Pat's making dinner. We can talk about all this. I'm not coming over, Peter. And I'm not running away. I'm done being afraid. I hang up the phone and turn to the final pages of my notebook. My handwriting looks different now, calmer, more deliberate. Like I've finally found my voice after years of speaking in someone else's words. If you are reading this, then what I feared most has come to pass. But before you judge what happened to me, you need to understand what I discovered. 20 minutes ago, I called my lawyer. Not the studio lawyer, not the one Bobby recommended, but the one person I trust completely. I told him about a safety deposit box in a bank downtown. About recordings and photographs and documents that tell a story the world needs to hear. If something happens to me, I said, wait 10 years. Then open that box. Then tell everyone the truth. He tried to argue with me, tried to convince me I was being paranoid. But I'm not paranoid. I'm prepared. Dr. Green's son arrives at 8:15, just like I knew he would. Just like they planned. How are you feeling tonight, Marilyn? He asks, setting his medical bag on my dresser. I'm feeling clarity, I tell him. For the first time in months, I know exactly what's happening. He prepares a syringe, my medication, he calls it, but I see the way his hands shake. I see the way he won't meet my eyes. Before you do that, I say quietly, I want you to know that I've left instructions. If something happens to me tonight, if I have another one of my accidents, there are people who will ask questions. People who will investigate. Dr. Green's son freezes. Marilyn, you're not thinking clearly. The stress, the medication, it's affecting your judgment. My judgment is fine. I know exactly what this is about. I know why Bobby came to see me yesterday. I know why you're here tonight. And I know that after tonight, none of it will matter anymore. The injection burns as it enters my bloodstream, but I keep writing until the very last moment. Until my vision blurs and my hand grows too heavy to hold the pen. Tell them that Marilyn Monroe wasn't crazy. Tell them she wasn't a suicide. Tell them she was a woman who learned too much about the wrong people and paid the price for refusing to stay silent. Present day, from the discovery of the hidden notebooks. 50 years later, the truth finally emerged from a forgotten safety deposit box in downtown Los Angeles. When Marilyn Monroe's lawyer passed away in 2012, his estate revealed the existence of documents that had been sealed since August 1962. Among them were 3 notebooks filled with Marilyn's handwriting, her own account of the final week of her life. The woman who wrote these words was not the fragile victim history had painted her to be. She was a survivor, a strategist, and ultimately, a truth-teller who understood the price of knowledge in a world where power meant everything. I want to be remembered not as the woman who died too young, but as the woman who refused to die quietly. Those words, written in Marilyn's distinctive script on the last page of her final notebook, have become a rallying cry for a new generation of women who refuse to be silenced by powerful men. Dr. Thomas Noguchi, the coroner who performed Marilyn's autopsy, later admitted that certain evidence from the scene had been misplaced or lost during the investigation. Phone records from August 4, 1962, disappeared from police files. The original timeline of events was changed multiple times. But Marilyn had anticipated all of this. Hidden in various locations around Los Angeles, in the homes of trusted friends, in safety deposit boxes, even in a hollowed-out space behind her bathroom mirror, investigators found a treasure trove of evidence that painted a very different picture of America's most famous death. Recordings of phone conversations. Photographs of government documents. Detailed notes about meetings that were never supposed to have happened. And most damning of all, medical records showing that the drugs found in Marilyn's system could not have been self-administered in the way the coroner claimed. The FBI files on Marilyn Monroe, partially declassified in the 1990s, confirm what her notebook suggested. She had been under surveillance for months before her death. She had been considered a security risk not because of her politics, but because of her relationships with men who shared classified information. The Kennedy family's official response to these revelations was silence. But former Secret Service agents, speaking anonymously, confirmed that both John and Robert Kennedy had been concerned about Marilyn's increasing demands for public acknowledgement of their relationships. She wanted them to choose her over their political careers, one agent recalled. She didn't understand that for men like that, nothing comes before power. Today, visitors to Marilyn Monroe's grave at Westwood Memorial Park leave not just flowers, but notebooks and pens. They come to honor a woman who used her words as weapons when she had nothing else left to fight with. Her story reminds us that truth has a way of surviving, even when those who speak it don't. It reminds us that the most dangerous thing a woman can do is remember, and write down, everything. Marilyn Monroe died at age 36, but her words lived on. Her truth lived on. And in a world where powerful men still try to silence inconvenient women, her legacy matters more than ever. Because the truth, as Marilyn wrote in her final entry, always finds a way to surface. even when it takes 50 years. Subscribe for more untold stories. Like this video if the truth matters to you. And remember, when they try to silence you, write it down. Make them work to erase your voice.